Daniel, the real problem with our podcast release schedule is that we record these things far enough in advance that I can't seem to work in my Formula One sub podcast very well.
Yeah.
Because it's not very timely.
Yep. I mean, we have that problem with camera gear too. It feels like we're a couple of weeks behind the news, but that's just the reality of making a podcast.
We're just not a news podcast, Daniel.
We're not.
We're a discussion podcast about camera gear.
As much as you would like us to be an F1 news podcast, we're just not.
We don't have to be an F1 news podcast, but maybe I want to have opinions about all the drama that came out of the Chinese Grand Prix. But by the time I'm talking about the Chinese Grand Prix, we're going to have finished the Japanese Grand Prix, I think.
It's a very different thing.
And
not the same thing.
If I wanted to talk a little bit about whether or not Liam Lawson is going to get the boot, I'll already know. Well, everyone's going to already know.
Yep.
Why are we even talking about it?
Yep. And if you're wrong, like if you predict something and you're wrong, it's going to be really embarrassing. For you, not for anybody else.
Maybe. I just know no one's going to care. We've all moved on.
Yeah.
We've all moved on to post-Japan.
Post-Japan. We're living in a post-Japan Grand Prix world.
I guess
you and I aren't, but they are.
I can make some predictions, maybe.
You could?
I don't know if I remember enough about the Japanese circuit to say. I can't remember if it's like long or squiggly. Can't remember any of it. Starts with an S, maybe? Not the circuit, the name. I'm going to predict that one of the McLaren cars will be on the podium. And the other one will be a Ferrari.
The other McLaren car will be a Ferrari?
No, the other one on the podium. And so help me if George Russell finishes in the top 3 again. I'm just going to do nothing about it.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video. Lucas, we've been getting a lot of listener feedback lately. And specifically today, we had 2 listeners take the time out of their day to email in and say that I should get a Pixis.
It finally happened. I was wondering if I waited long enough, if you would start the show. Which, this may be the first time you've ever started the show, Daniel. This is pretty huge.
I think there's been at least one more, but, we've done a lot of shows.
Okay, so. Yeah. Well, if someone could go back and listen to the 128 preceding shows and let us know.
Prove that right or
wrong. Let us know which one Daniel did or did not start first.
Yeah, please do
that. First.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes, 2 people wrote in, and they said that you should buy a Pixis.
They did. Yep.
And no.
Those are the people who have spoken.
No, I will not allow it.
Why not?
Because B-Raw isn't real raw.
Oh, so now you're a raw purist. Is that how it is?
It does demosaicing partially in camera.
Well, we can't have that.
That doesn't really matter. I think it's just going to be a lot of work.
Yep. I think mostly for you, if we're honest.
Yeah, maybe mostly for me. I don't know, man. I'm having the more that I'm going down this road, the more I just don't know if it's for us yet.
Yeah. Just a lot of file space for one thing.
Yep, a lot of file space, or you have to convert it, and then converting it's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I'm sure we can keep talking about it, but I just don't know if we're there yet.
Well, we'll see.
You'd have to get that 8-bay Synology.
You're right. I would.
Yep.
I think we'll wait and see what happens at NAB whenever Blackmagic does their QVC presentation of pulling random camera gear out from behind a counter.
It's going to be very good.
And then there's also the rumor of Panasonic releasing some sort of potentially like a compact cine camera sometime in April. So definitely want to see those things happen or not happen, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, just more waiting.
More waiting.
On the subject of RAW, which I think we've talked about for like 3 or 4 episodes at this point.
It's definitely an arc of this podcast.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of at the end of that arc, but I was listening back to, I think, one from 2 episodes ago, and you said something offhand about ProRes bitrate and ProRes RAW bitrate, and I was like, yeah, and I just agreed with you, even though you were totally wrong.
Well, what was I wrong about?
ProRes RAW does not record at a constant bit rate.
Okay.
Well, ProRes does record at a constant bit rate, and so you're getting that intra-frame codec type recording where it is taking a photo every X seconds or whatever, 24 a second. ProRes RAW is taking the pure sensor data, but the way that it's encoding, you're not actually processing the image every second or whatever. You're taking the data in, but it is accounting for what's happening in the frame. And so if you have a lot of motion and a lot of busyness happening, though, you're going to have a larger megabyte per second compared to if you have nothing happening in the frame. And so if you're comparing a still shot to a not still shot, the ProRes file will probably be larger, whereas if you have a lot of motion, the ProRes RAW file may be larger.
That makes sense, because it's like it probably only saves when things change on the sensor or something like that.
Maybe, yeah. Or I think it's fairly complicated, obviously, but I just agreed with you. The ProRes RAW was a constant bit rate, and
it was not.
One of us was wrong.
And it wasn't you? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just saying that I should not have agreed with you.
Oh, okay. Well, now that you've made that clear for the record.
Okay, and then just one more thing on this topic. Someone who wrote in called me a photography masochist, and I feel seen.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good description.
Yeah, okay.
I liked it.
It all checks out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so nice when we hear from people. Like, I feel like I was actually thinking recently that we went a pretty long time without anybody contacting us, and then we got like 3 in 2 days.
They all contact me.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I just don't tell you about
I see
all
how
of
it
them.
is.
Yeah. No, me and the listeners have a special relationship. It's
if you say so.
A-B conversation.
I know how that ends.
Tell me about the Zoom H5 Studio.
Yeah, so I found out about this the way I find out about all of Zoom's products, which is that for some reason I don't know if I follow them on Facebook or if I just get targeted Facebook ads from them. I think it's the latter. But I just was scrolling on Facebook and I saw an advertisement for a Zoom product. And I was like, I don't think I've seen that one before. Which is, I don't know if that means their marketing's working. I guess it does. But yeah, they have a Zoom H5 Studio, which seems like they've updated the H5 for the 32-bit float. So kind of like how they updated the H4, which is the one you have. Now they have the H5.
Did they update the H4 to multiple lines? Because I have the H4 Essential. Is there like an H4 straight up?
I don't think so. I think they just kind of added descriptors to them, because there's the H4 Essential, and then instead of the H5, this is the H5 Studio.
Interesting, because I had an H4N Pro before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's another version of the H4. So,
well, at least they're making it more or less clear.
Yeah, I don't know.
So what's special about this Studio one? Does it still have dials like the other H5?
It does have dials, which is kind of interesting for 32-bit float. But I think it's because, like, one thing they said in the marketing is it still supports 16 and 24-bit like non-float recording.
Does it have the little bars over the dials?
I can't remember if it has the bars or not. I thought the bars were kind of cool.
That's why I'm asking.
But yeah, that was an interesting thing. The other thing about the original H5 is that it had there's this capsule system where you can swap out like the microphone at the top. So instead of it just having a built-in set of stereo mics, it was kind of like you could change it out into different things. They had like a shotgun mic and so on and so forth. And they've added a really cool one for this H5 Studio.
And that's not irregular for the H5. There was, I think that even the H4, you could pop that microphone.
Oh, the H4 you could too?
I think it was slightly different. Anyways.
Yeah.
Moving on.
So they added a cool one for this H5 Studio where now they have a wireless lav capsule. So you can basically like pop this wireless receiver thing onto the top of the H5 Studio. And then they have two little wireless lav mics, just like a DJI mic type situation. But it wirelessly transmits to the H5 Studio, and you can also use the two XLR inputs at the same time. So for something like us, where I didn't realize
it took the place of the microphone capsule on the top. But
yeah,
very cool that you can also use the XLR. So I guess it's still 4-channel.
Yeah, I think it's a 4-channel. So It's kind of neat for something like an interview setup like what we do, because you could run those labs if you wanted to, and then also do like a backup audio with a shotgun mic and run all of that into one recorder.
That's cool. How big are these capsules?
You mean the lav thing?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it looked pretty small, but I don't know. It was kind of hard to tell from the picture, like how it compared in size to stuff like the DJI mic. So I don't know if it's any bigger. It looked like the same general size class as those.
I mean, we've been hemming and hawing about what to do with our mic setup and when we're going to move off of the DJI mics. And like, it feels like the answer has finally come into production.
Maybe.
However, this would require us, it would cause a single point of failure in the audio.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because you're still recording everything into one unit. So maybe it could be a concern.
I would consider it a downside, but I would also think that one could run this and the H4, and then just do 2 zooms.
You could,
and maybe that's fine.
Yeah. The other thing is, I'm not sure whether the wireless labs are actually 32-bit float. It was just kind of unclear, like, because when I think about it, to get the wireless, like, it's probably converting it to digital before it transmits. And so you would think that the wireless lab itself would have to have like the 32-bit float stuff inside. And I just there wasn't a lot of detail on their site. So I wasn't sure whether that was 32-bit float or not.
It works with the UltraSync Blue.
Yeah. So that's the other part of this is time code. So just like on yours, there was a little like USB dongle looking thing that you had to plug into the side of it, basically to give it to give it Bluetooth, and that's how it supports timecode. This one also supports that, but then they're additionally supporting another timecode adapter, which that one still has Bluetooth, but it also has a 3.5 jack for timecode. So if you have one of the non-Bluetooth ones, like a Deity TC1 or a Tentacle Sync or whatever, you can plug that into it, and feed in timecode with with a cable, which I'm a big fan of, because I didn't feel like the H4 Essential Bluetooth timecode was really that great. It seems like it's probably the most unreliable of the timecode stuff we've played with. But the other cool thing is, with that timecode adapter, the H5 Studio can also generate timecode.
Ooh.
So that's kind of a neat feature that the other ones didn't have.
I was trying to find some information on this while you were talking, and I have not found any sort of more information than what you've already told me.
Yep.
I would think that the only way you're going to get 32-bit float is on those recorders themselves.
That's my guess too. I bet the labs are 16 or 24-bit. But I don't know. This thing is $349. That's without I don't know what the wireless capsule costs. I don't know what the timecode adapter costs. Those are presumably like added costs on top of this.
Oh yeah, they are.
So on the expensive side, but this one seems like it has all the features. Like it sounds to me like they're kind of evolving their line as they go. I think it's really cool that they added timecode support through an actual cable, because I think a lot of people would prefer that over the Bluetooth. And I think the wireless lab thing is kind of cool. Like they're seeing the way the market's moving and the way people kind of want to record their audio now, and they found a neat way to integrate that into their lineup that I wouldn't have expected. Like I wouldn't have thought of the system, but I think it's pretty cool.
I'm generally a big fan of Zoom's products. I have yet to use or see something from them that doesn't feel thought through enough that they know their market and they're trying to service that market. So this is pretty cool, and I could see it fitting into your gear bag.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe.
I don't know.
TBD.
We'll see.
Pretty cool.
Yep.
Okay, are we done with all that stuff, Daniel? We're
yes.
like 45 minutes into this episode.
Mm-hmm.
This is the topic today is way more important than anything else we've talked about.
Is it now?
Yes. This is part one of, I'm thinking, probably a 5 or 6 part series on the Fujifilm GFX100RF.
Figured that was coming. The X Summit has finally happened, and you haven't been able to stop thinking about it, and now you get to talk about it.
Daniel, how many of these do you think I've pre-ordered?
I mean, So the episode that released today was the one where we talked about gear purchases, and you don't spend money on camera gear. So I know the answer is 0, but I wish you were pre-ordering one.
What if I pre-ordered one for you and one for me?
It's never going to happen.
And then we could be buds, camera buds,
Mm-hmm.
Twinkies. That's a different thing. I have to stop saying that.
Yep.
Okay, Daniel. Oh my gosh. It finally happened.
It did.
As everyone was expecting.
Yeah, all the rumors were true.
They were all true. We now have soon, on like April 20-somethingth, the medium format Fujifilm point and shoot fixed lens GFX camera.
But it has RF in the name, so that means it's RF mount, right?
Rangefinder.
Oh.
Range.
That makes more sense.
Finder. Which, ironically, Canon doesn't make a rangefinder.
That is a little ironic.
Riddle me this. Okay. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to start. I actually do know where to start. Okay.
You've known where you wanted to start for weeks now.
First,
here you are.
First, the first thing I saw on this was an advertisement or something in my feed, one of my feeds. I don't even know which one. Blue Twitter or
probably Facebook.
I don't know.
No, I get all my camera news.
I cannot tell you the last time I opened up Facebook. I literally have no idea. I was probably trying to sell something. I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, Daniel. They were like, look at this new, hot, large format digital camera. And I said,
large format.
And I said, no. No. Like, not even close. No, it is generous to call it medium format. Yep. I think we're doing Fujifilm a favor when we agree with them and say it's a medium format camera.
Yeah, because like it's medium format in the sense that it's larger than full frame, but it's not the same as film medium format.
It's larger than full frame. But this sensor is small in comparison to real large format or real medium format. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking 43.8 by 32.9 millimeters. It's a big sensor. It's a big sensor. It's not large format. So help me. I was like, you know what? I don't even care about this camera. So I don't even want to know anything about it.
What's the story there? Did they basically have stopped using the phrase medium format and now they're just calling it large format? Is that what happened?
No, it was just that marketing material. They call it medium format in other places.
I see.
They don't even know what to call it.
Yeah, they don't even know.
They're just making up words. Apparently words don't have any meaning.
Apparently.
It's very frustrating. I will not let that stand. I've already written 2 angry emails. That's not true. I should have tweeted at them or something. Been like, wrong.
It's not too late.
You know what? I'll go look it up. I'll go look up that post and I'll just tweet at them. No. Incorrect.
Yeah, that's always the best way to intelligently argue your side of the internet.
Yep.
Just say no.
Someone says something, you go, wrong. Anyway, so very, very exciting. This is, we'll look back to that in a second. Well, no, we know. Okay. Fuji kind of they've wanted to make a more approachable, more manageable, carryable GFX type camera. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, obviously people have been saying, hey, we love the X100RF.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious.
We love the GFX. Let's make it happen. Come on. And I think they kind of like tried a little bit, tested the market a little bit with the GFX50R, and then they because they released the 50mm 3.5 for that camera, which is a pretty small pancake, relatively speaking. Mm-hmm. And the 50R was the smallest GFX camera that you could buy. Sure, it's only 50 megapixels and 102 megapixels, but even still, it's the medium format sensor, and that was kind of like almost like the first version of this. And now we have the fixed lens version, which has the newer 102 megapixel sensor. It's got the newer X processor 5. Basically, it's everything that you would find in a GFX100 Mark II, the second, but in a way smaller form factor. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of cool to see them make that next step into the actual product from the 50R.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like they kind of stair-stepped along, and then now they finally like gotten to I mean, hopefully not like the ultimate conclusion, but
It's
like
not
a more of a pinnacle.
It's not a direct. It's not a replacement for the 50R. I would hope that they would still release a new version of that camera. I don't know if they're going to want to put a 50 megapixel GFX sensor into something again. They seem pretty committed to the 102 megapixel sensor.
They probably need to be too, because I mean, 50 is they're full frame cameras that exceed that. So like the 100 is at least more unique.
You would have a significantly larger pixel pitch.
That's true.
And maybe better in low light, maybe like lower noise, I would think.
True. Yeah.
And but it's also like the price point. This new camera, like the 100RF, is $4,900, and that's like a really steep entry point, but it's also kind of the cheapest GFX camera plus lens combo that you can buy. Like if you're trying to get into medium format, you could probably get a 50R with a 15 millimeter 3.5 for slightly less, but not substantially less. So they've really kind of set the bottom rung for like getting into medium format, which for me, I thought was like half the reason I got into film was I'm kind of interested in shooting in different formats than APS-C because all my cameras are crop sensor. And I mean, I like the size and there's a reason I buy those cameras, but it would be interesting to have and to play with something that's, larger than APS-C, and like, why not go even larger?
Why not?
And
I can think of 4,900 reasons.
I still haven't bought that medium format film camera, which is where I'm going to go from here anyway. But still, a medium format all-in-one point and shoot. You're not committing to a whole new lens ecosystem.
I think
you can just like try it.
I think that's probably the biggest deal is that, if you wanted to get into GFX cameras, it's like, great, now I've got to buy how many different lenses, and you're going to be tempted to buy more and stuff. And with this, I mean, obviously you're limited in that you only have the one lens, but the trade-off you get is that it's a little bit more portable than, an interchangeable lens GFX camera.
Yeah. I've been trying to think of, like, is there a way that I could get away with just having this camera?
Like as your only camera?
No, not like my only camera, but what if it was my photo camera?
That'd be interesting.
Like not like my work photo camera, but like my everything else photo camera.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with 100 megapixels, you can probably crop a little bit, but
we're going to get into it, Daniel. You just wait. Okay. Starting from the top. This is, like I said, 102 megapixels. It's the same X Processor 5. That is the same, 16-bit raw image. It's like 80 to 12,800 ISO. Extends out to like 102,000. It can do like 6 frames per second mechanical shutter. It is, the image quality that you're going to get out of the what is it, like $8,000, $6,000 GFX 100. Very cool. All right. The lens that they have on this thing is a 35 millimeter f4.
Yeah, which is, since it's medium format, that means that you go the other way to get full frame equivalent, right? So it's the full frame equivalent is wider than that.
I do full frame equivalents for APS-C all the time for context, but for some reason I'm irritated by going the other way.
But I think it you kind of have to, right? Because like if I said, it's a 35 millimeter lens in this medium format camera, how does anybody know what that means?
They just have to deal, Daniel.
They just have to deal.
They just have to deal. No, I mean, like having a comparison, being able to say, okay, this is like give or take the same thing as having a 28 millimeter f 3.5 or something like that, and it's that roughly range / field of view. I do think that. There's the whole conversation about the full frame look. Yeah. And like, how do you define that? And what is that? And I think...
Well, you said to buy a Panasonic camera, Lucas. Because your Fuji sure doesn't have the full frame look.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. I think that it's something that is really hard to actually really show. And I think what it comes down to, in my opinion, is like the compression of the lens. And so if you shoot at 35 millimeter or 85 millimeter on a full frame camera, you have to shoot at a a shorter distance on an APS-C camera to get the same like field of view. And if you kind of have, if you like use the working distance to like line up the frame exactly, it's going to have kind of similar-ish compression because you had to, step back on the crop sensor in order to like get the same framing. But like that, it's like whenever you're doing that A/B comparison, the images generally end up looking mostly the same. But to an extent, especially like when you get closer to the subject or you're shooting on a longer lens, you have that compression look. Like an 85 millimeter lens is going to have a certain amount of compression, whether or not it's on a medium format camera or an APS-C camera. And it just kind of, you're changing like how close or far you are to the subject. And so you can effectively get closer to a subject, but keep the compression. And to me, that's kind of like what people are seeing whenever they're talking about that full frame look.
Interesting.
And so this is like maybe less so in that it's a 35 millimeter lens. You're like, oh, but it's the equivalent of 28. 28 on a full frame is kind of wide.
It's on the wider side, I'd say.
24 is like your standard like wide angle. And if you shot something with 24 up pretty close, like you'd get a little bit of like, not distortion, but
it's a certain look.
It's going to look different than if you shot it from farther away. And the things that are close to the frame are going to look bigger. And if you take a picture of someone like 2 inches from their nose versus 20 feet from their nose, like
for sure,
their head looks way different. And to me, it's like that's the whole point of like that full frame look. And so it's a 28 full frame equivalent, but at 35 millimeters, you're getting even closer to normal. You're like almost at a normal focal length. So you're getting a very similar to normal look, but you're getting the working range of like a street camera. And so I think it's kind of a cool way to think about it. And like, that's why maybe I think a little bit is lost when going the other way to talk about full frame equivalent, because if you're really used to shooting at 20 millimeter on full frame, 35 is really kind of, it's close enough that maybe it doesn't matter, but there, like you notice the difference as far as like the way that compression looks and how you shoot those lenses. So,
are you saying I just wouldn't understand because I don't have a medium format camera?
Danny, you just listen. You just don't get it. Over here in full frame world, it's that medium format look you wouldn't understand.
Yeah, apparently.
Anyway, okay, so it's a 35 millimeter f4 lens. People have been rioting in the streets about this thing not having any sort of optical image stabilization in the lens or IBIS in the camera.
It kind of surprises me though, because it's still pretty wide. So like, why are those things needed?
Okay, so Fuji released this image that I threw in the show notes that no one else is going to be able to look at, where on the y-axis it has focal length and it goes from like 0 to 500 millimeters. Yep. And then on the x-axis, they have shutter speed, and it goes from like 1 second all the way up to, 1,000th of a second.
Sure.
And then on this graph, they're like, okay, in this range, you would use a tripod. And like they've colored a range where if you're shooting at, an eighth of a second up to 250 millimeters, you need a tripod. But if you're shooting at, 1/250th of a second, you could probably handheld, but you need IBIS if you're shooting at 250 millimeters. And then like, above this line, you always need OIS or whatever. And so in this magical graph that they made, they were like, here's the lens. If you're shooting at 1/60th of a second, which, rule of thumb, double your shutter speed, 1/.
Yeah.
That's the minimum shutter speed you should probably be shooting with a lens in order for it to be sharp.
I'm usually not, I usually want it faster than that, but yeah.
Yes. I especially to freeze motion, like 1/500, 1/250 for slower motion to freeze it. But if you have a 35 millimeter lens, 1/70 is probably about as slow as you're going to want to get in order to kind of resolve handshake and that sort of thing. And so what they've done is they drew this little circle here and they go, according to our graph here, you don't need IBIS in this camera.
Conveniently on their graph, the camera slots right into the handheld section.
Don't need it because why are you going to shoot slower than 1/70 anyway?
Yeah, why would you do that?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable trade-off to get this thing as small as it is.
Do the larger GFX cameras have IBIS?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a
think
sensor
so.
size thing.
No, I think it's just a matter of the mechanism. The X100 is like 3 millimeters thicker in order to fit an IBIS unit in. This thing, I mean, it would probably be even, I would assume that it would be even bigger for a medium format. I don't know.
Interesting.
So like, would they really want to make this thing like 5 millimeters wider in order to fit the unit in?
Absolutely not.
And they're trying to make it as small as possible. This thing is surprisingly small. If you consider the length of the lens, it is smaller, like length, like back to front, than a Leica Q3.
Huh. Interesting.
And it's almost the same width, just a smidge taller. It's very, very compact. And so I think that like it makes a little bit of sense for that trade-off. I can see their justification. Part of my I'm fine with it. I would say it would not prevent me from buying this camera. But with that high of resolution, I don't think the same rules apply. Like the amount, I feel like you with a lower resolution camera, like 40 megapixels, 24 megapixels, you're not getting the same level of like detail. You can't zoom in or crop in as much.
Good point.
And so the amount of like handshake that you can absorb into a lower resolution photo is more than you could absorb into a higher resolution photo.
And I think that makes sense.
I think that in order to like truly get the amount of detail that is possible here, you would have to shoot at a much higher shutter speed than like the rule of thumb would suggest. Which like may be fine, but now like you're shooting on an f4 lens. And so you're going to have to crank that ISO.
Yeah. Well, f3.5 full frame.
Sure.
To use those full frame equivalents. It's kind of a trade-off because, like, sure, you'd love a faster lens, but I mean, even on full frame, I've noticed like trying to shoot a really wide open lens, like 1.8, you can't get enough stuff in focus. Like, you know, it depends on what you're shooting, but you know, if you're shooting like an event or something, you want to get a picture of a person, sometimes you just can't get enough in focus at full wide. So I feel like the 3.5 aperture is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think it's very workable for what this camera is. It's just not going to be a bokeh machine, and I think that's fine.
Yep.
I don't think that that's what this is necessarily for, and it's pretty clear that Fuji doesn't think that's what it's for either. So kind of an interesting choice in the lens. So far, the reviews seem to point out that like it's a decent lens, but the sensor is the lens is maybe more of a limiting factor than the sensor.
That's kind of interesting.
Which like maybe vice versa. Like if you're going to compare this to a Q3, which you know $6,500 versus $5,000.
I know that's a big difference, but it still feels like the Q3 is a competitor because if you're spending $5,000 on a camera, what's another $1,500?
And then for that $1,500, you get a terabyte of built-in storage and wireless charging, and Leica.
Yeah, and Leica,
and a significantly better lens, like a substantially better lens. That's like I heard someone say that on the Leica, it seems like the limiting factor is the sensor versus the Fuji. The limiting factor is the lens.
It's interesting that those trade-offs exist, but yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of like where you are. Like, in order to resolve to 102 megapixels, you have to have really good glass.
Yeah,
and if you're optimizing for size, which this thing is so small, I think it's the right trade-off. I think it makes a lot of sense. They are doing a lot with this sensor, and I find it just super, super interesting. It seems like, you know, most of the selling points and appeal of this camera are related to the zoom lever functionality and the crop functionality. And those things really rely heavily on the fact that they have 102 megapixels to work with.
Yeah, yeah.
And it kind of like lends to the concept of, okay, what if you just captured raw data and then did everything in post? And if you have 102 megapixels, it's like you can crop for days. And so you just can kind of shoot and then figure it out.
Yeah. I'm interested to talk more about stuff like the aspect ratio and the zoom lever and how those factor, like how those interplay with what you just said. Cause that's always been my question with things like crop modes. Like, well, are you better off doing that in camera or, you know, just just take the picture full wide and then crop it later.
I mean, that's just going to come down to how do you want to shoot?
Do you mean how do you want to do photography?
No.
You don't mean that?
No, I don't mean that.
It feels like
no,
you mean that.
I don't mean it at all. It's like some people just want the image and they can crop it in post, which is usually how I shoot. But also, like, as a Fuji shooter, I will like pick my film simulations for kind of what I want the picture to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm happy with the JPEGs, especially if it's something more casual, I don't even necessarily go into the RAWs. I like being able to get what I want out of the camera without having to do the edits.
It feels like you're talking about doing photography.
No. And it seems like, for something like this, where this is the camera that you just have with you all the time. If you're not like have like your casual always with you camera maybe has less of a workflow, what's the word, like the overhang like function to it. Like when I shoot with my professional camera, I shoot and then I take the RAWs and I bring them into my development software and I have all this baggage that it comes with it, versus like my fun everyday camera. I just want to be able to shoot the pictures and have them.
Yeah.
Being able to do the cropping and the zooming in camera makes it so that like you can get way closer to the final result without having to do the edits, and you have the RAWs as a backup so that sure you can if you need to and want to, but being able to do it in camera, I think, opens up a lot of possibilities for really just kind of enjoying getting the pictures, getting the photo that you want, and then just sharing it rather than having to then have this whole extra step later.
Yeah. Yep. I think that makes sense. I still think it's doing photography, but I mean, I get what you're saying. It's like even if you can do stuff in post, I mean, kind of the whole point of Fuji with the film simulations is, what if you can make shooting the photos more enjoyable, and what if you can kind of just get what you want in camera rather than doing it later?
I think in most cases, trading off shooting at different aspect ratios and trading off to shoot with, as Fuji calls it, a digital teleconverter, it's never really worth the trade-off. But in this case, it seems like the exception to the rule. 102 megapixels is so many megapixels. It's almost a detractor to me for like most of the things that I would just want to casually shoot. Like I don't want a file to deal with the file sizes at 102 megapixels. Things probably are like over 100 megabytes a piece.
Yeah.
They're huge.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to shoot, maybe you're shooting at a lower image quality, like 60 megapixels or something, or like instead of large, you're shooting at normal or whatever in camera, just so that you don't have the same size files. Now when you zoom in, you're basically not losing anything.
Good point.
So in full frame equivalence, this thing has 4 different zoom modes, which is the 28 mil equivalent. And then there's a 35, a 50, and a 63. So in the GFX terms, in the medium format terms, that's 35, 45, 63, and 80. And when you crop all the way down to 80, which is like a 1.8 crop roughly, you're getting a 20 megapixel photo.
So it's like still the same number of megapixels that you get out of most Micro Four Thirds cameras.
Yeah.
It's almost as much as my S9. Like 20 is still a very respectable number.
When you're shooting at the 45 millimeter focal length, which is 35 equivalent roughly, it's still 62 megapixels. That's the resolution of an R5.
It's it's nice that they're offering
R5.
that and kind of like exposing it with
A7R5. Thank you.
It's nice that they're exposing it like with a button. Is it a button on the front? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's nice that they're doing that because it feels like the trade-off you make with a camera like this is that it's compact and small, but you can't change the lens. And that's kind of a bummer. But it's nice that they're basically giving you 4 different options that, because of the megapixels, are, still totally reasonable. Because that's kind of the problem I've had on the S9 is that the S9 has a crop zoom mode. But if I try and go more than like 1.3x, 1.4x, something like that, the quality of the image is noticeably worse because you just don't have the pixels. And so, this one, luckily, like it does have the pixels, so you can do that and still get like a really nice photo.
So whether cropping in post or cropping in camera, the resolution makes this specific camera just super, super appealing to me. We've talked about it before of like when we ever switch off of Fuji and like et cetera, I'm still imagine having like my own, like this is my little carry around personal camera kit for my own like fun photography
Sure, I
stuff.
think it makes perfect sense to have a personal camera versus a work camera.
Yeah, exactly. And something like this is, an X100RF, I could see myself as like, this is my personal camera. It is limiting in that your 40 megapixels, whenever you crop into it, 2x on that camera, you're down to like 16 megapixels or 12 megapixels.
It's not half because it's like you really probably divide by 4.
Yeah, exactly. And so it can be limiting, whereas like something like this with all this resolution, you're actually getting so much more range and so much more capability. It really feels like you're giving up less to get into a compact fixed lens camera.
Yeah.
And I find that it's like super duper appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so you mentioned it, the front, the zoom button. Have you seen this thing?
I mean, I've kind of seen pictures of it, but I'm sure I haven't poured over it the way you have.
Daniel, how many videos have you watched about this camera?
0.
What?
Yeah, this is your baby.
I have watched every video on the internet about this camera.
I believe that.
Every single one. Anyways, the front of it, it's like a button that has a turn lever to it. And so like you can like click it, but then you can push it left and push it right.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a little like dial thing that kind of rotates and then snaps back to center. And so you can use that to click through your zooms, but then activate and deactivate your zoom. It's a very fun little button.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool.
The front little like rotating dial, where like your rotating ring thing on the front.
Yeah.
It's like super tall. It's 4 times the height of a normal like rotating, finger thing. It's very fun. That's all. It's just very fun. I think
I can tell you're very excited about this.
Okay, all right. We can talk more about the buttons as we work through this. I got to loop back to this other discussion topic, which is the size. Daniel, what do you think about the size of this camera?
I mean, it seems pretty reasonable for what it is. Like anytime I think about medium format, I think, this is going to be huge. And I mean, I guess it shouldn't be that surprising because the X100RF is also smaller than, say like a Fuji X-T50 with a lens on it. But I mean, for a compact camera, it needs to be small, and it seems like they pulled that off.
Have you clicked on either of these links?
No.
That are in the note? Okay, you click on those links,
Okay.
and I'm going to mention that this thing doesn't have an optical viewfinder, and some people were kind of upset that they didn't.
Now, it does have an EVF, right? But it just doesn't have an optical viewfinder?
Correct, yeah. So on the X100RF, and I think even on the X Pro, there's an optical viewfinder, and then you can pull a lever and it pops up the electronic viewfinder. So you can use either one if you want to use like a traditional rangefinder or you want to use it as an EVF. This does not have that option, but it seems like because of how focused they are on this camera being about the flexibility and the capability of this 102 megapixel sensor, that you wouldn't really get the same experience of cropping and zooming that you would if you were trying to shoot through the optical.
I see.
I respect the decision there, though, it would have been cool to have maybe an optical. I do think you end up with a higher resolution viewfinder because this thing is like 5.6 million dots at 0.84 magnification, which is pretty decent. Like the next step up from there is 9 point whatever million. There's not too many cameras with that.
It's not the most we've ever seen, but it's pretty good.
It's good. You're spending $5,000 on a camera. It's the right kind of viewfinder that needs to be in a $5,000 camera.
So looking at these, you sent me these comparison things, and one of them is GFX100RF versus the X100RF, and the other is versus the Q3. So versus the Q3, I kind of feel like this camera might, like, you might perceive it as being smaller. Because, I mean, it is taller, and I can't tell if it's maybe a little wider than the Q3.
It's like a millimeter wider.
But what really stands out to me is that the lens is like sticks out like half as much.
Yes, I think it's like 3 centimeters at most.
Yeah.
It's very short.
Yeah, which is really impressive. On the other hand, though, with the against the X100 I mean, you got to be honest. I'm not saying you don't get more for the size, but like, you got to be honest. That's quite a bit bigger than the X100.
It is quite a bit bigger. It is almost the same width, maybe like not exactly clear from this photo, but it is substantially taller.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just thinking like if I'm going to be putting one of these in my bag, I'm for sure going to be able to tell the difference between those two cameras. Like
Yeah,
in terms
absolutely.
of how I pack or whatever.
Absolutely. When you're looking at the pictures, especially compared to the Q3, does it give you Instax vibes?
It kind of, the Q3 one definitely does because of how like tall and wide it is. Like it just, yeah, it kind of feels that way.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, that makes sense, right? Because it's a bigger sensor. You got to have space to put it.
It's also a 4x3 sensor, so it's a more square sensor.
Interesting.
I do find it interesting that your medium formats and your micro four thirds are that 4x3 ratio. I kind of like shooting in 4x3. I don't know if I prefer it, but I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Mostly because if you're shooting in 4x3, you can get closer to, you get better like scope options as far as if you're going to shoot in anamorphic, which obviously not going to shoot in anamorphic with this thing. But speaking of, because segues, you can kind of shoot in a Cinerama, which isn't like a formal aspect ratio.
Just like really wide.
Yeah. So I forget the name of the camera, but like Fuji made film cameras that shot 120 film that were.
Was that the X-Pan? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the X-Pan where it's like super wide. It's like 65 to 24, I think is the way they call that ratio out. But that's 2.66 to 1, which I think that Cinerama was like 2.65 to 1. That's like, it's
pretty
a
dang
common
wide.
enough, it's a common enough movie width, but that is about as wide as you're going to get on movie width.
Yeah.
Most things are scope, which is 2.35 or 2.39 to 1. I didn't see that as an option here, which is kind of unfortunate. Honestly, for me, I would almost want to shoot, like have that option to shoot in like 2.35 to 1, but I think that it's maybe close enough to shoot in 65 to 24 that I'd be okay with it.
Do you think you'd be doing that? Would you be shooting?
Oh yeah.
See,
definitely.
that's again for me the kind of thing where I would have a hard time doing that rather than just shooting the biggest frame I can and then cropping in post.
I would shoot it and I'd shoot RAW plus JPEG and it'd be awesome.
I guess if you shoot RAW plus JPEG, the RAW does give you the full sensor and the JPEG has the aspect ratio applied.
Yeah,
Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's how that works. And we do need to run through all these crop modes, but the way that it does the cropping is super cool. So you have the sensor is like the screen on the back, which is like $3.2 million or something like that. That's a decent screen. Yeah, they have like black bars on the side, and when you're shooting in like standard 4x3, so like some of the icons are on the side, like outside of the frame of the photo.
I like that.
Which is something that Sony had done, and it's kind of cool they're doing that here. Anyway, you can choose to shoot where it shows like just the cropped image, so just full screen cropped image. You can have it show in like with just a rectangle around what you're shooting.
Oh, like it shows you the full frame, but you can it shows you the large frame, but you can see the cropped mode.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can do it where it darkens the thing. So
cool.
You can see a shaded version of everything you're shooting, and then what's in like full visibility is the cropped area. And so like you can choose to like, okay, I'm going to frame it here, but I can see everything else I'm getting for my RAW later.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. I like that.
Yeah. Super cool.
It feels well thought out.
The one thing that it feels weird and maybe less thought out is that there's a 3x4 mode.
Yeah, why not just turn that camera?
You're literally cropping into the resolution of the sensor to shoot in 3x4 instead of rotating the camera. And it's a physical dial. The aspect ratio thing is a physical dial on the camera that you can't remap, and it has text on it to show you which aspect ratios you're flipping to. And they wasted 3x4 on one of those dial locations.
It's easier that you won't hurt your wrist. It's easier than turning your camera.
I guess if you have like a tripod plate or whatever, sometimes it's hard to turn the camera. Anyway, 1 to 1, 3 to 2, 3 to 4, 4 to 3, 5 to 4, 7 to 6, 16 to 9, 17 to 6, which I need to do the math on that, and 65 to 24. I was reading the 17 to 6 as 17 to 9, but now I'm wondering what 17 to 6 actually is. Can you do the math for me, Daniel?
Nah, that's okay.
Okay, fine.
iPad doesn't have a calculator.
Right, well, does now. That is 17 divided by, did I say not 6?
Yep. 17
That's
divided by
2.83 to 1? Dang,
that is not 2.35 to 1.
No, but that's like super duper wide. Love that. Anyway, physical aspect ratio dial.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just like the crop mode thing. Like, I get why you'd want to have that, and that was one of the things that people seemed like really excited about in the rumors. So, it's, if anything, like, it's kind of nice that they're doing different stuff with this camera. Like, I can appreciate that, I guess.
I love it. I think that in theory, I find it all very stupid because you should just shoot raw and make your image what you want. But this being a point and shoot, here's my camera, do it in camera type camera. Awesome.
I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense for anything other than like pro work, because I've done a lot of photo editing, and sometimes you can really super optimize things like how you crop your photos, and spend like tons and tons of time thinking about like, wait, should I make this frame a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger? And I do kind of like the idea of, I'm not going to not think about that as much and just take the photo I get and make some sort of creative choice in that moment, and that's going to be good enough. And that wouldn't be the right thing to do for, some professional work, but I think it makes a lot of sense for your casual photos.
I don't remember if the X100RF has dual SD card slots, but this one does, and I guess like that's what you get for the extra height.
It's so big, yeah. Why not?
Is 2 UHS 2 card slots.
Nice. That's a good feature.
Mm-hmm. It also has a 4-stop optical ND.
Did the X100RF have? Does it have a 3-stop?
I don't remember how many stops it does, but the X100RF also has an optical ND. It's kind of like, you're gonna probably need a tripod if you're gonna shoot with that thing. This thing does shoot video, but it's like 4K 30 at most. So you're not really going to shoot video with this thing. But if you are shooting video, you could throw the 4-stop on there and get slower shutter speeds to make it look cool in a pinch. But obviously, like the 4-stop is more for slow shutter speed photography, which you're kind of probably just going to want a tripod. And this doesn't feel like a tripod camera. Maybe you have like a GorillaPod or something that's like super compact. I don't know.
It's kind of funny to me that what I would really love to have a built-in, even a fixed like built-in ND on, is definitely a video camera. I would love that.
Yeah.
If whatever hybrid mirrorless camera I was using, even if it wasn't variable, just give me like a 4 or 8 stop ND that I can flip into place. I would use that all the time.
All the time.
And it's funny to have it on a camera that, I'm not saying it's useless, but be a lot less likely to use it here.
It's funny that it ends up on the compact cameras too.
Yeah.
Where so it's not a space thing.
Yeah.
Is what you're telling me.
Exactly. And by the way, the X100RF only has a single slot, and it's UHS 1.
Oh.
So, probably it's just the megapixels. Like, that's probably why they supported UHS 2. But that's a big improvement, having dual slots. Yeah,
definitely. So it's a 49 millimeter filter size, and whenever you buy this thing, they give you a fancy rope strap kind of thing, so you can look like a Leica bro. And it comes with a clear or UV style filter, and you have a hood that makes it not like weather sealed. So
it's one of those cool looking square hoods too,
yeah,
right?
It is. So it's not weather sealed by default, but you can put this lens hood on there that makes it weather sealed.
Interesting.
And it's square and looks super awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that they include those accessories. I mean, if on one hand it feels like you're paying that much, they better, but it's also like they don't really have to. So it's cool that you get those things.
Yeah, definitely. Something else that we hadn't mentioned yet, it weighs 735 grams or 1.6 pounds. And it has a leaf shutter in the lens rather than a focal plane shutter, which means you can sync flash speeds up to infinity.
Wow. That's something that, you don't see on very many cameras anymore. Although some of Fuji's other cameras do have a leaf shutter.
Yeah, I don't remember if the Q3 has a leaf shutter or not. It may or it may not. But it is kind of one of those things where it's really nice to have whenever you can get it. You are sacrificing some speed whenever you do a leaf shutter, but you are gaining some flash syncability, which also like another weird thing. Why are people bringing a flash and a tripod with them? I don't know. Maybe this camera.
Maybe somebody's buying this to shoot like, artsy portraits or something.
Sure. It's nice. It's nice to have it all in there.
Yeah.
Like you have the ability to do the flash sync, you have the ND, you have all those megapixels, and so it's more things where it's like I can just bring the one camera instead of my whole kit
Yeah.
and get close enough to like doing the thing I want to do with just the one camera.
Mm-hmm. It's I don't know when you want to start talking about the like, is this a camera people should buy sort of thing, but
Whenever you want, Daniel.
What keeps coming to mind for me is, this is expensive, right? It's $4,900. But then I think about all you and I do with video. And we talked a couple weeks ago about tripods. And one thing you said in that episode was like, you should think about, you're putting your $3,000 to $5,000 camera setup on a tripod, and how does that work out? But it made me think, like, how much money have we spent on video gear, of like all these lights and sound stuff and V-mount batteries and monitors and, and all that. Like, doing video is a pretty big financial investment.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me think, imagine you're in the situation you're in, like in terms of, the job you have, et cetera, your camera budget. And if you didn't do video, like if you just didn't do video at all, you're only a photographer, like would this camera be a reasonable like expense? And I feel like maybe that changes the equation a little bit.
I think that I would be giving up a lot on the telephoto side. Yes, this thing can crop into the equivalent of like 63 millimeters or something at 20 megapixels. And cool, great. Oh man, like sometimes I want to shoot. I like the way it looks at 200 millimeters.
Yeah.
And I want like a portrait thing with like low depth of fields.
I don't see this being most people's only camera, but I guess more of what I'm saying is like, could you picture a world where you don't own $4,900 of video gear and instead you own this camera?
Yeah, I could see that. It would be hard to, like, it's not the only camera, but I could see it being like the go-to travel camera and the camera that I bring with me everywhere. So like if I'm going to go like do photography, like I'm going to go on the trip and like the whole point is that I'm going to shoot photos, or like I want to like take this certain photo. I do want that whole kit. I want to be able to choose my depth of field and choose my focal length and really just like dial in and make all those decisions. It's what I love about the whole gear side of photography. But I would say that, call it 60% or more of what I shoot is like we're hanging out with our friends. I'm going to like a family dinner or birthday party or something. Or like we're going on a trip and I don't want to bring everything because the whole point of the trip is not photography. The trip is I'm going on, I want to capture memories. And so I'm only going to bring like one or two lenses. We're going to go to Japan soon and I'm going to bring one camera and one lens. And
we'll see if that ends
do it,
up
man.
being true.
I'm bringing my 23 and that's it.
And how many cameras are you going to come home with?
More than one. I'm going to come home with more than one camera. Besides the point. It's like there's a huge chunk of what I shoot where this would be perfect. This would be exactly like the only thing that I would need, and it would fill a huge role. And so
it's a huge camera that would fill a huge role.
But also like part of like what I think about with this camera is, man, could I get rid of a bunch of stuff and like buy this camera?
Yeah, like could you get rid of some primes and an XT5 and so on and so forth?
Yeah, like if there was enough overlap between, say, like our pro video camera stuff, like Panasonic releases this video camera deal, and I can't stop you from buying it. Then I'm like,
this is a very likely scenario.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, we need to have matching cameras, and that camera is actually like pretty stinking good. What if I like divested from my XH2S and moved into L mount or something, and then maybe now it makes sense for some of like the photo shooting things that we do to get an S1R2 or an S5 II and use that as like the photo camera for taking like real photos, and then sell everything else and get a friggin' GFX100RF.
This would be a wild journey for you to go on, and I would love to see that happen.
It would be absurd.
It would be completely chaotic.
Absolutely ridiculous. There's no way. No way that's ever going to happen. But also like It'd be pretty stinking cool.
All right. So
I love low depth of field stuff, and so not having like 1.4, 1.8 being or f2 being the bottom of that range is kind of a bummer.
yeah, that'd scare you a little bit, wouldn't it?
Wait, if this like the Leica is 1.7 or whatever f2. No, it's f2. No, it's 1.7 for the 27 millimeter and it's f2 for the 40 millimeter, and that would be a hard decision to make. I wish this thing was like f3.5. It was just like a smidge faster. I would want it to be like a 2.8 equivalent. I would deal with it being 3.5.
Okay, so let's think about a couple of comparisons here. First thing, why this over the X100RF?
It's the flexibility. You get 102 megapixels to crop and zoom with. The X100RF is awesome. I have an X-T5 with a 40 megapixel sensor. It would be, unless I was like totally divesting from Fuji and just wanted to keep something for the film simulations and the fun, which is the only real reason I would get something like this, is if I sold my entire Fuji kit, but I wanted to keep a Fuji camera because I like Fuji cameras. Then something like this or an X100RF makes sense. And I've used the crop modes and I've used the X-T5 and I'm very familiar with that 40 megapixel sensor. It's like good enough. I don't want to punch in more than like 1.5. I don't want to get less detail than roughly 20-ish megapixels.
It feels like this is about 3 times more expensive than the X100RF. And it does feel like you get that much extra like capability. You go from 14-bit RAW to 16-bit RAW, and the dynamic range and the flexibility you get out of that is substantial. The noise performance out of this sensor compared to the 40 megapixel sensor is going to be better. This has a larger pixel pitch than the 40 megapixel sensor that you get out of the X100RF, which means you can gather more light. Yeah. This is the same pixel pitch as a Sony A7R5. It's like, but that many more megapixels. It's like really good. And then like additionally, your noise is whatever's happening with those pixel sites, right? As far as like what are they capturing? And because you have such a high resolution, your effective like the size of each noise piece is smaller. And so you can effectively get like a cleaner image out of all those megapixels. It's also Bayer, so that the Lightroom noise reduction would work.
Yes, exactly. It's a Bayer sensor. I think you're gonna be able to noise reduce out of this maybe a little better.
Maybe X-Trans isn't the ultimate.
Hush, Daniel. Hush. All I'm saying is that like if you took an image and you cut it into 102 million slices instead of 63 million slices, that those slices are smaller, therefore like the things are closer to the things, and so you have to like make up less whenever you're demosaicing, and there's less like more things of like, I can just like copy over to get rid of the noise for here, and so noise reducing would look less smushy, but also it would look cleaner in general.
Right. I agree.
So I think that having something like this where I shot it ISO 6400 or whatever, it's going to look better at 6400, and you're going to have so much dynamic range and so much flexibility with those RAWs compared to like, let's say an A7 CR.
Yeah, that's another good comparison though, right? Because that's a much cheaper camera. It's full frame. It's got a pretty high megapixel sensor.
I looked at that as like, well, since I'm going to buy this, maybe I should cross shop.
Yeah.
And like you get for like $2,500 or $2,900 for an A7 R.
Yeah, I
CR.
think it's pretty close to 3,000.
And then there's a f3.5 35 millimeter Sigma lens that's very compact, which is like exactly the equivalent of this. Whereas if you shoot the GFX100RF at the 1x crop or whatever, to get 35 millimeter, it's like basically the same shooting because it's 63 megapixels.
Yeah, fair enough.
So anyway, it's like $1,000 cheaper.
Yeah.
Or more. It's like $1,500 cheaper.
But it has Sony menus.
It has Sony autofocus.
True.
But you don't get all the sweet crop modes, man.
I imagine that lens you talked about would stick out more too.
It's fairly compact. I don't know if it'd be that. I think it would be probably a smaller enough package.
Yeah. So maybe that's the most compelling competition to this. I feel like the film simulations are kind of the main thing you lose. And I would say just kind of in general, like character or like, I don't know. Sony's to me feel very clinical, I guess. Like it's like they're technology first and all that, but I don't feel like they have a lot of like soul to them.
Yeah, you could probably say that. You're not getting the film simulations, you're not getting the tactile dials, that sort of thing. There is I have a link here that from DP Review, they did like a little price comparison chart, and they compared it to like, obviously the X100 but the Leica Q3 and the Hasselblad X2D are the big ones that people are comparing to. The Hasselblad, obviously, because it's medium format, but that is a more kind of similar shape, kind of, it's not really smaller, but smaller-ish medium format. That thing is 100 megapixels. But it's also like $8,200.
That doesn't feel like it's in the same price class.
Yeah.
Even the Leica Q3, what is that, like 6,500?
6,395 is what this chart says.
It's like, I said earlier that, I think people would cross compare those. I still think that's true, but I mean, even that is like pretty big price difference, but 8,200 is like close to twice as much. It's really expensive.
It's a tough call too. Like the Leica is going to be way nicer to just use and have as a thing, and the lens is going to be better and faster. But it is, it's 63 versus 102 megapixels. Like you're getting a decent drop, like, it's not like that much. You're getting 30% more pixels on the Fuji, but it's also, way cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah. Cheaper. I mean, we did say that the Q3 has the built-in storage, which is something, but if you're really excited about the crop modes and about the megapixels, the Q3 gives you less for a significantly higher price.
I like the concept of having these compact cameras being like the premium high-end compact cameras being extremely high megapixel, because it just feels like it gives you more flexibility for later if you're only bringing this one camera with this one lens.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference. Like that for me, that would maybe make me more inclined to take one of these cameras with me. Whereas like with my S9, I might be thinking, I really kind of need multiple lenses because I don't know what situation I'm going to end up in.
Right, and I think that the A7CR is probably the best bang for the buck in that category of things. It's not fixed lens, but it's a very small camera and it's 63 megapixels, and like it's just going to be cheaper. It's going to be cheaper than finding a GFX100R and putting a 50 millimeter 3.5 on there.
Definitely.
So I think like that's kind of the entry point, but even still, that's $3,500 or something.
Mm-hmm.
If this GFX100RF, like getting that price point for that 102 medium format sensor down to below 5,000, I think is pretty appealing, especially for someone who's maybe like wants to consider getting into medium format. Maybe it's like you shoot full frame or you shoot APS-C or something, and you're like, man, maybe this is a direction I want to go. What is it like to shoot with that Fuji? Like you can get into it without having to invest all the way.
Yeah.
And even if you decide it's not for you, like this is still a pretty good camera to just have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it seems like a great, a great release by Fuji. I was really surprised they came in under 5,000. I agree. I think that's like an important target for them to beat. I think it was good that they came in below that. And personally, like, I can't really think of too many surprises here in the sense that, like, I can't believe they left X feature out. Maybe IBIS being the most, the thing that sticks out the most. But I mean, it seems great. Other than saying I wish it was cheaper so that it was in a price that I would consider, I can't really think of what I would want them to do that they didn't do. Did anything stand out to you in terms of like why did they leave this out?
No, not really. There's one thing that I wanted to mention, which I'll loop back to. I think that most of the things that I'm hearing of people complaining about is like, where's the IBIS? F4 seems like a bummer.
Yeah, you did mention the F4 earlier,
and I'm basically okay with it. I think it's a fine trade-off and a fine solution. If those are the only detractors for this camera, I mean, they're doing pretty good. I think that, like, for me, the more we do video and like the more we shoot and like the longer like camera gear and all this sort of stuff, the more I can imagine myself spending like more money on something that's like Some of it's a hobby, some of it's, a little bit of a business. And I could like maybe one day see us buying $5,000 camera.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like for work kind of thing.
That's like you can draw a line from buying that to getting paid for contracts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or whatever, right? So to me, like it's not unreasonable to think that one day I'm going to buy a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 camera to do things with the camera. I have a hard time taking a step back and saying I'm going to spend $5,000 on a camera that's only for me, only for my personal stuff. Because I'm not that much of like I'm not a pro photographer. I mean, like we do photography and we get paid for it sometimes, so technically, but I'm not out there like selling these amazing images that I shot. And because like if that was me and I'm like doing like real photography and like selling, here's a picture of a lion or a sunset and people are going to love it and they're going to put it in an art gallery. Well, yeah, sure, I'd buy one of these cameras because then I would have 102 megapixels with me all the time so that I could really capture even more art because I have like the best eye in the world. That's not me. I'm like, how do I not drop this in Caddo Lake when I'm trying to take pictures of a crocodile or an alligator?
Yeah.
So I don't know. The one thing I did want to mention is that because this thing is, a pro video camera, it includes things like waveform and vector scope.
Unlike the XH2S. Thanks, Fuji.
Like, what the heck?
I bet you could timecode sync it with the ultrasync blue.
I just about flipped a table. They called it large format and they gave it waveforms. Where are my waveforms? Can't even.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us. And if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.